Welcome to the next in a series of interviews we're conducting with researchers from RTPI accredited planning schools about the projects they're involved in and why they're important to the planning profession. My name is Jenny Devine and I'm the RTPI's research officer. And this episode features Ying Liao, research student at Cardiff University. Ying was good enough to answer a few questions about her research project entitled Design of Age-Friendly Public Spaces in the Context of China. And I hope that Ying's answers to our questions will help us to understand a bit more about the research and its importance to the planning profession and wider society. The questions appear in writing throughout this recording, followed by Ying's verbal responses. More information on this project can be found on the RTPI website, and if you have any questions, please email them to research@rtpi.org.uk.
I think the previous work or research, they're focusing more about social factors or facilities or services, especially for the special older people, for example, the disabled. They explore the needs of disabled in relation to building daycare homes, aging homes, or modifying the medical care system or their housing, especially in China, where it is still stated in the initial stage of age-friendly development. Besides that, from global scale, for example, from 2006, Global Age-Friendly Cities Guide, which is advocated by 12 Dimensions from WHO, as well as a National Design Guide for the urban planning in the UK. However, these are no details or from the macro level scope, no details to mention or suggest how to design public space specifically and for the all older users, not only for the disabled or the general young people. Also from macro level scope, there's no details to mention or suggest how to use special or social conditions as a mechanism to cater for all older people's requirements and preference. As for my research, I try to fill this gap from the macro level scope and for all older users' needs to figure out more professional knowledge in building a better age-friendly cities or public spaces. For example, in China, it has the current policies and guidelines to support building parks and residential spaces, but there's no details, especially for the older users' needs. In addition to planning professional view, I think my research can support them. Initially, my research can give them more details of suggestions from macro level scope to building or support building age-friendly public spaces, especially for the park and street. For example, they might need to build or design more seats for the older people, but they might don't know how and where to put these seats in the public spaces. Secondly, the key findings of my research could be served as an assignment framework to help them evaluating current quality of public spaces. Thirdly, I think my research can provide more evidence to support upgrading current policy guidelines in terms of urban planning or urban design in building a better age-friendly public spaces or cities. Based on my research, there are several qualities that show more apparently significant to the older users. For example, accessibility. I think it is really important to the all users, especially for the older people who are more fragile and who have less capability of working long distance. I think most of the older people like to visit park if the park is inaccessible to them, such as with a long walking distance or over 5 or 10 minutes, or with more difficulties of crossing road, they might lose a really important type of public space for the demands. Furthermore, the flexibility is another key quality, especially in China. I think most of the Chinese older people like to join different group events, such as group dancing, social dancing, or group exercising together. I think they need a really spacious space with a strict designs to support their group event. So the flexible spatial conditions can support more flexible social conditions, ultimately to support the older people's broader needs or broader demands. So this, in terms of the planning professional view, all these qualities in my research has been extended. For example, the accessibility. It is not only to think about accessible distance from the home to the park, as well as need to consider the accessible distance in terms of sublocation in the park. Yet, indeed, the flexibility is still need to think about the event-based space along with different edge design, meaning for sitting with suitable viewing distance. So giving these suggestions, the older people can get more happiness and comfort in their later life. Yeah, I think planning professional is really important. People who live in a better livable space or environment could be more happy and healthier. So people and the related public space could be or have a really close relation in between. So nowadays, for example, design park, they are focused more about the social factors of facility and services. For example, improving availability of kiosk, toilets, or coffees in the park, or considering improving the standard of barrier-free, especially for the wheelchair users to easier access. So all these universal design, access design in China, in the UK or in other country have a really huge change in terms of urban planning to bring more inclusiveness in the society. As for my research, from the macro level scope, I think the quality of public space needs to change. For example, design park. Actually, it's not limited to mention design park. My research has clarified the important role of green spaces. So it needs to consider to design different scale of green spaces, especially within 5 minutes walking distance as a priority, because those elderly who are more fragile, who have less capability of walking long distance might get less resources in their nearby home spaces. Furthermore, as I mentioned before, the flexibility, the spaces, the public spaces or in the park should to consider to design more flexible. For example, to consider design the park or the sub-locations in the park should be more event-based or along with the different edges design. For example, with elevated layout or shelter layout, as well as need to consider these edges, meaning for sitting, also with suitable viewing distance, such as during 2 meters to 6 meters. Giving these suggestions, the older people can get more comfort and inclusiveness in their later life, as well as based on these suggestions in my research could support the planning professional in the scholar fields of urban planning, urban design to build a better age-friendly public spaces. My research will complete within this year earlier, and I think or hope the outcomes from it could be contribute to refresh more professional knowledge in terms of the scholar fields in urban planning, urban design from an age-friendly perspective, as well as I hope contribute to refresh the methodology in these scholar fields. Also, I think it can provide more evidence to support upgrading current policy and guidelines in building a better age-friendly cities.